Yo, what's up? I'm finally back. I took a few days off because I was just grinding out Overwatch. This video is gonna be about Ethan and why I'm gonna skip him. He's good, but right now I think he's kind of like R2 or bust, because in PvE, while the buff is really good, it's not really that game changing. Game changing in PvE unless you are re-runing your units to be minus 20% less crit rate to put into something like speed, attack, or crit damage. Then this is not really that game breaking. Plus 20 speed is okay, but most of the time you don't even run like speed buff unless you're trying to run like speed buff plus this one and gain like maximum stats. Then maybe that could be something, but really the 20% plus crit damage and crit rate is not really all that crazy. And in PvE, reducing the chance of taking critical hits is really not that insane, unless I'm missing something in the club content. I haven't really taken a look at it. Reducing crit damage in PvE is not really that crazy. In PvP though is going to be really good, because that's going to deter DPS, I suppose. In PvE, if you're trying to run him, then you need to empty out one spot, and that's not really a bad thing per se, because he does provide a lot of things. This is a pretty good buff, but it's a lot weaker than a 60% attack buff, because attack buff is a separate multiplier. It's kind of like it adds 1.6 times to your damage, whereas this one is not really a 1.6 times. It's like it's only plus 20% crit damage, and unless you want to rerun with 20% crit rate, then you can get a total of plus 40% crit damage, which is still less than the 1.6 times multiplier that you would get from an attack buff. So you need to empty out the space. You need to run an attack buffer and this guy, so not really a good thing. One thing that he has going for him is that he is currently the best AoE defense breaker in the game with the highest chance. I'll put up the chance for some units for AoE defense break. I mean, this guy has the best. I'll put up the numbers on the screen. So yeah, and his captain ability is pretty garbage. It's so shit, man. Crit rate leader skill is such a throwaway leader skill. It shouldn't even be in the game anymore. It's so dumb, and it's so limited as well. Story, who the fuck cares about story captain ability, bro? And then infinite miracle, again, what the why is it so limited? And then Calamity Island, Calamity Island is a one and done so far. I mean, I've done like both towers with pretty much relative ease. You just slap Zeus relics on everyone, and then you can just clear it. Even like, I think 1 month in, you can probably clear it. So yeah, this is pretty garbage. Leader skill, absolute trash. And now I'm gonna go into, so yeah, the reason why I say he's an R2 or bust, because PvE, it's really hard to make him work. You need a slot to make him work, and there's a lot of better alternatives. You can just run like you also need a healer in your team for like Sentinel Hunt. You need an attack buffer, you need like DPS that do multiple things, and then you want to slot him in as well. It's really difficult to make him work for PvE to make him worthwhile. So the next place we're gonna see is PvP. The thing is, he is a debuff character, and debuff characters right now is pretty garbage in PvP. If you look at Jiangman is one of the best PvE character in the game. She has one of the highest damage in the game for PvE, but in PvP she has no place at all. In higher tier PvP, I mean. In lower tier PvP, you probably can make her work, but in higher tier, she cannot work at all unless you try really hard to make her work. And at best, she's gonna perform slightly, you know, just decent. She's not gonna be that crazy. And the reason is because Jin Yu Yao is everywhere in Point War. Not just Jin Yu Yao, Light Above Rune, Clara, Cecilia, R6, Sally. They are everywhere in PvP, and you can't avoid them in Point Wars 6. I don't know about 16, 17 and 18. Everyone has either an R6 Sally or Jin Yu Yao in their defense, or they are running a, not really, I think the only person that runs like a speed control team is Energy. His team is pretty cracked, man. He has like, I think he has the fastest Dahlia, so he can run that team. But if you don't have a faster Dahlia, then you can't really run that team. So yeah, in PvP, at R0 he really doesn't provide anything. His debuff is really weird. It works even without you having the magic tune on. I'll show you. Like right here, right? I don't have any magic tune on me. So the description is, when the carrier casts basic abilities, remove magic tune from the target, won't miss and cannot be resisted, and deals true damage to the carrier. So this deals true damage to the carrier is not contingent to you having a magic tune on yourself. I'll put it at 1 times. Boom, he takes 20% of his HP, and I don't have any of that thing. This could be good in like PvP comps that don't have a cleanser, but realistically in like Point War 18, 17 and above, everyone has a cleanser in the team or immunity. Yo, this is the post-edit Ggez. I forgot to mention something. One more thing is that his Panic Gaze buff is for 2 turns, and if the enemy casts any skills other than the basic ability, it only adds 1 cooldown increase, not 2, which is a bit of a bummer. So he kind of sucks there, because only 1 turn of cooldown increase is not really that impactful. They could just take the turn, and then when they move, they could use all of their skills again. So yeah, 1 turn, and his debuff is on a 4 turn cooldown, so you can't really spam it. So yeah, he kind of sucks a bit. And then now if I put up the magic tune, you'll see that it will remove my magic tune, which is really dumb in my opinion. I think it shouldn't remove the magic tune. That's kind of stupid. The magic tune is only 2 turns. Why would you have to, why did they have to make it remove the magic tune? It's legit only 2 turns. It's not even that broken. Look, it removed my magic tune because they have that debuff, which is really stupid. Yeah, his R0 is pretty much unusable in PvP, because the thing is, this crit rate and crit damage buff is pretty useless in PvP, high PvP, because you are running mostly a tanky comps, which doesn't use either crit rate or crit damage. You just basically brute forcing your way through with like supports and Alexa or Luo Yen. And I'll show you what my current PvP team is. My current PvP team is something like this when I go up against a tanky comp. Yeah, this is my current PvP setup that I use against like Point War 17 and 18 tanky comps that doesn't have any buff stripper. If you take a look at this, right, the only one that can benefit from that buff is Chloe. The rest is only going to get that plus 20 speed to be useful. And rather than having a plus 20 speed, I would just rather bring a speed buff instead, because this team doesn't have any speed buff, and speed buff gives 30%. Yep, 30%. So if you have like 300 speed on one of your units, getting a speed buff is going to give you 90 speed, which is 30%. It's going to give you 90 total speed, but this guy only gives you plus plus 20 because it is not a percentage and it is fixed at plus 20. So it's not really that game changing on supports that gets like plus 20 speed. You're better off with a speed buff instead. It's just like a speed buff, speed lead buff. Speed lead buff is only on your base speed. It doesn't consider your additional speed. So if like you have 20% speed lead, that's going to give you 20 point something. At R0, I think he's unusable in PvP with all the Jin Yu Yao cleanses, immunity, Gabriels, everything running in PvP, hides, you know, all those shenanigans. So at R2, I think he's going to be really good because he gives that plus 20 speed initially. PvP, it's always who gets the first turn gets a massive advantage. So let's say I'm using this team, right? My Abigail is pretty fast, so I can get the first turn. I can either push my Gabrielle or push... My Gabrielle is also pretty fast. She has like 300 speed total. So my Gabrielle can take the first turn. Why that's good is because I can shield up, put all my buffs, and when the enemy moves, they can't stun me. And sometimes if I get outspeed, the enemy Clara moves, AP push their Gabriel on Tyranny of Zeus, and then that Gabriel could potentially stun my entire team, and that could result in a loss. And that's why turn 1 advantage is massive in this game. And Ethan R2 can help you get that first turn advantage pretty easily because it gives you plus 20 speed. Let's say your Abigail has 320 speed, right? Total speed, and you have an R2 Ethan, which is going to give an additional 20 speed. So that means she has a total of 340 speed. So that is going to give you... It's kind of like having a 6% AP push on your fastest unit, which is pretty good. It's kind of like having a speed buff without having a speed buff, which is pretty massive. And yeah, that's how Ethan can help you get that first turn advantage in like a tanky comp. But after that, his usability is kind of limited. This team, right? Gabrielle's usability is that she can provide 3-turn immunity and a defense buff. The attack debuff is kind of useless in PvP right now. Her defense break is also kind of useless because of Jin Yu Yao running everywhere, but she has damage. She scales off speed, and that's what makes her super good. Ethan does not. His debuff, again, Jin Yu Yao everywhere. Jin Yu Yao cleanses first before she does anything, so that debuff is going to be gone before the Jin Yu Yao takes a turn. So unless you land like 2 debuffs on Jin Yu Yao, then you have to gamble that the panic Ggez debuff does not get removed. But I want to talk about speed cleave team. This guy on defense R2, he's going to be really good against speed cleave team because you get that plus 20 speed. If speed cleave team, if they don't get first turn, they basically lose on the spot. So yeah, that's 20%, plus 20 speed could be really huge. And also because of that crit resist, this could also be massive against a speed cleave team. But then again, speed cleave team is basically dead at this point. There's only like a handful of players that can run speed cleave team in Point War 17 and up. 16, I think 16 as well is pretty difficult to make speed cleave teams work without Raven. Other teams are pretty unreliable. You need to rely on debuffs like your Luo Yan, reducing the max HP cap. So yeah, in defense, he could be really good against speed cleave teams. Against tanky comms as well, he's going to be pretty good because of that 20 speed, getting you that first turn. She could maybe swap out your Gabrielle, but then again, Gabrielle on Tyranny of Zeus is like so busted right now. 3 hits, 3 hits, and then 2 hits. This guy doesn't do any hits on his S3, but he does do 3 hits on the second skill. So yeah, he has that. And again, Gabrielle was free, so you should have her R6 if you've played before 3.1 point something. Now I want to talk about how he could benefit the speed cleave team. So if you are running a speed cleave team right now, people are running one attack buffer and AP pusher. So that could be either R2 Unas or R0 Unas with Ashley, or they could just use Dahlia, right? And then they use an attack lead. But if you have Ethan at R2, not R0, okay? R0 is unusable in a speed cleave team. R2, he gives you plus 20 speed. If your Dahlia, let's say my Dahlia on my main account is 327 speed, Ethan gives plus 20. So my Dahlia has total 347 speed. So my DPS, because Dahlia has 25% AP push, my DPS needs 75% of my Dahlia speed, which is 260 speed. So they need to be at 260 speed in order to take the turn before the enemies, right? So the enemies don't cut in between. But Ethan gives plus 20 speed, so they only really need to have plus 140 speed. And why I say plus 140 speed is because most DPS they hover around 100 speed, so they need plus 140 speed, which is pretty good. 140 speed, you can take the turn. You can also reduce your crit chance, because Dahlia gives crit chance, he also gives crit chance. Alright, so this an example of the speed cleave team. You have 3 DPS, 2 supports, Dahlia with 347 speed, and then this one gives 20 speed to everyone. So all of your DPS, they need plus 140 speed roughly, and 20% less crit rate. So Narmer can have plus 50% crit rate, Ashley can have plus 50% crit rate. So you can put that in attack or crit damage or speed if you need any, which is why it's super good, I think, in PvP, because he also provides the best chance for defense break, AoE defense break, which could help you cleave like R6 Sally maybe, but that one is a bit cancer. R6 Sally is overpowered in this game right now. This could work. You don't need to buff up with Ethan on the first turn, because he gives everyone that crit rate and crit damage buff at R2. The turn order is going to be Dahlia AP pushing, and then Ethan with the AoE defense break, the highest chance, and then whatever, right? And he also has multi-hit, so you could prop Ashley's passive, and then Ashley moves, Narmer, and then Ggez. The current team that people run, I think, is like this. Or if you have a Raven, then people run a Raven instead for the AoE strip and defense break. But this is slightly different, because your speed, you need a lot more speed. Let's say my Dahlia is 327 speed. My DPS needs to be 75% of that. Oh my god, they need to be 2000 speed, what the fuck? So they need at least 145 speed, plus 145. With Ethan, you only need plus 140. And that's talking about my Dahlia speed, right? So this is the speed that you need if you run with 4 DPS, and all 4 of your DPS, all 4 of them, need to have at least 245 speed, which is really difficult to do, and that's why most people can't run this type of team. But if you run a 3 DPS team with Ethan could be your, you know, your defense breaker. You only need 240 speed because he gives plus 20 speed to all of your units. R2, I need to reiterate, you need Ethan at R2, okay? R0 is unusable in PvP. So yeah, that's it. That's my conclusion. In warm-up match, maybe he could work. You could, because in warm-up match you could ban the Jinyu Yao. In Point War you can't, unless this cancer meta goes away, but most likely it won't, because that's currently like that has always been the best type of defense in the game, aside from like speed cleave, right? If you have like the fastest Dahlia in the game, then you could run a speed cleave defense team. Ever since the inception of the game, tank teams have always been the meta for Point War defense. Previously it was Clara with like a bunch of tank units, and now it's Jinyu Yao. Clara, you still see her sometimes, but mostly it's Jinyu Yao to counter this control meta, and unfortunately this debuff units fall into that category as well. So yeah, I think I've been rambling on for too long. I'm gonna skip Ethan. Anniversary is coming. He seems kind of mid. When you look at his kit, he seems kind of broken, but when you factor in everything else, everything, the meta in the game, how to use him, and why his buff isn't all that crazy when you deep dive into it, he's really a skip to be honest. So yeah, if you want my opinion, R2 or boss. If you want my opinion on whether you want to summon for him or Embla, then 100% R0 Embla is going to be more impactful for you, because R0 Embla currently on the Sentinel Hunt, I don't know about the new Sentinel Hunt, I haven't looked into it yet, but the current Sentinel Hunt, Embla is like the best DPS in the game by far, doing like 2 to 3 times the damage that Yun Xuan is doing. R0 by the way. But aside from that, she isn't really used all that much. In PvP she's basically unusable because she is a debuff character as well, unfortunately. But as long as the boss for the new Sentinel Hunt can be debuffed, then she still should be one of the best DPS for that mode. So yeah, I think that's about it. Ciao.